right. Okay. So this last chapter has to do with what's the future bringing in channels in themselves. And so what this deals with less in terms of specifics, but in trends that you're finding in the overall structure that's going on with channels in specific and in general. I was talking to a couple of engineers yesterday that worked with Chanel and a couple other corporations that are doing programming, and it's amazing what they're trying to do. It's amazing that Walmart did many of these things 20 years ago. But the reasons and the focuses of why they're changing are come down to the things that we're going to talk about now. And so you've got three things happening. There's a shift to service-based economies, or a predomination of service, a globalization of the markets, and certainly we can see what their impact has been over the last 5 years. And in some ways, we understand the fragility. And of course, not only the growth of e-commerce, but it's in essence assumed takeover. One of the things I happen to ask is, did they have a mobile solution yet? And the answer was no. And I was shocked by that because it just seems like it's the natural progression. So the first thing that we have to realize is that the most difficult thing with all standard products that we have is that when one product looks like another or acts as another, what's the only way in which we use as a determinant as to which one to choose? If there's no difference between two items, how do we choose? Price, exactly. And so the importance of services is not to be understated. We are shifting to services for both offensive and defensive reasons. In other words, we use this as a way of keeping other corporations off of the backs of our customers, because quite simply, if the consumer just simply thinks that that any other way that we wish to do things is going to be the same as everything else, then we're only going to choose this price. The other reason that we also choose services as well is to be able to control the mix so that we have a certain satisfaction that's built in the way that we do our jobs. So Emerson Electric used to focus on refrigeration products in grocery stores. What happens was they bought those back and they leased the equipment instead and provided maintenance. And so Emerson is the number one, not manufacturer of refrigeration equipment, but in essence, they're the number one servicer of information equipment. And so the money is made in the maintenance and the service agreements as well. This basically services increases the level of differentiation, all right? It also allows a higher degree of integration between the supplier and the consumer as well. And when you customize your particular offerings to the consumer, the customization creates uniqueness. Remember, we sell on the differences, not on the likenesses. Services also increases a greater interaction between the consumer and the supplier as well. And then finally, it creates a much more steady level of income. When do you expect most refrigeration equipment is bought? Just a guess.
It's hot out.
Yes, that's simple. Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem with that is, especially if you're a manufacturer, it means that you must anticipate surges and layoffs like no other way. However, if you consider services instead of manufacturing, it means that you spread that out over the years and it becomes much more valuable. All right. Another shift is, we talked about this in chapter 1, is the concept of disintermediation. All right. So disintermediation means basically this. If we look at the standard structure from the manufacturer to the wholesaler to the retailer and then finally to the consumer, what we're talking about now is the concept that the manufacturers are getting rid of the people in the middle. And that, in essence, is the concept of disintermediation. You're cutting off your channel partners to sell directly to the consumers, and this is the ultimate common output of e-commerce, especially when you consider mobile technologies. Manufacturers are shifting themselves down the chain. Because then the manufacturers can offer those services to the consumers. Let me also say that it doesn't work for everything, but certainly it works for quite a few things, especially consumer goods as well. Manufactured goods, especially those that are highly complex, medical equipment especially, many of those absolutely need the middle groups to be able to provide the needed services. Let me also say that disintermediation has been sped, especially with such groups as eBay and Amazon, who are able to allow the manufacturers to speak directly to the consumers as well. And so this shift downward is key. Now, I want us to review what services are, and if we're selling services, we have to understand what they are. A service is not a physical product. A service is intangible. A service is consumed at the moment it is produced. Bless you. Services can't be inventoried. They can't be patented, although you could patent a process. And they cannot be physically displayed. And so think of that. There's no way to put a haircut on a shelf. Example. Services can be very intimate. How many in here have someone who cuts your hair and nobody else in the world cuts your hair? Yeah, we all do. I think so. You know, when we find that one person who can do it. And that is an example of an absolute. And so that is one of its perishability, one of its parts is its intangibility. As it said, it can't be touched, can't be seen, can't be inventoried, can't be patented. And it has a significant influence on marketing channels. Because services can be the difference between success and failure. There is a mutual desire to draw closer. Because along with more intangibility is the greater fear of risk. If I buy a piece of equipment I'm guaranteed by the manufacturer that it should meet certain standards. If I go to someone for the first time for a haircut, all I'm hoping on is trust and perhaps a good word. And so there's the natural tendency to desire a closer relationship and a service, which is another reason why channels are shifting more to service. As I just stated, when it's a product, it's manufactured to a controlled environment, many attributes specify the performance is accepted. It is the impact of an employee on a particular item is minimized. The employees are working to a conformity, not to uniqueness. Heterogeneity signifies being unique. And uniqueness is good. We want that. In marketing, we have this concept that is known as co-creation. It means that the customer needs to be present at the time of production. And it means the consumer works with the manufacturer in order to achieve some success. I have a journal article with my wife, and we talked about the concept of how it's called pursuing fitness. And so if I were to say to you, I wish to be fit, what does that mean? In the last 100 years, that has been defined as corpulent, which means fat, thin, muscular, toned. All of those things are examples of fitness. And when a physical trainer, you go to that individual and say, I want to be fit, each one of those would have a different interpretation depending on your own body mass and your own desires. If you're looking to be trained for long distance marathon running, you're going to have a significantly different training than if you were trying to be a weightlifter. And so the co-production, the desire to be able to create something unique requires the customer to be present. And then also things like healthcare and education. I should also put those in as well. Which means this: channel structures have to be flexible depending on a consumer's needs. Does anybody on their phone have an exercise or a walking or a calorie counter or anything like that? Yeah, most of us do. All right. The structures that were built through the mobile phone allow us to do that in a much more intimate manner. And this is the creation of a hybrid channel to be able to help you to do those things. So this is the first, the shift to services. The next is globalization. There is the search for revenue growth for all markets, for all retail, and for many businesses. quite simply, we have filled up and saturated the United States with retail stores. And that's been one of our major issues. And so the desire to grow is the first reason why there's been a shift globally. There are aging populations in the United States, decreasing growth rates. You could also say competitive rivalries, and in what would be considered the industrialized world, the first world, it is time for those particular benefits to spread into other areas. You're also finding corporations from emerging markets that are expanding into developed markets as well and providing their unique benefits. You could also say that the pandemic has become a driver now for more solutions when it comes to shipping. And with the advances in infrastructures, we have ways into emerging markets that make it viable. And although I haven't talked about the internet yet, I will. But the internet has accelerated international expansion. It means that any company can go on Amazon, be an Amazon partner, and be able to be anywhere in the world. It's also a natural progression when you think about it, when you consider the standard marketing strategy of getting good in one location, then expanding in the markets with your existing item. Think of it this way at Starbucks. Starbucks started out with a unique product. They developed their market structure. They got together a complete package. Then they took that package and started putting Starbucks all over the United States. Eventually, they built up the United States. Then the only thing that they can do is come up with unique products in the existing Starbucks that are all over the United States. And eventually, all that they've done is they filled it up. There's nowhere else to go. The natural progression is to take that and move it somewhere in the world and be able to take those competitive advantages and leverage them to other locations. So you start with the desire for revenue growth. There is the natural opening of international markets. And then finally, you find those locations where your particular advantages are desired, and you go there. In South Korea, Starbucks is so popular that girls between the ages of 14 and 17 will go buy a Starbucks there, which is 12,000 yen, which is $12, will wash out the Starbucks cups and carry around their own coffee in the Starbucks cups just to be seen having a Starbucks. That's just to give you an idea. Anybody know what is the favorite dinner for Christmas in Japan? No. Kentucky Fried Chicken. I am not lying. Okay. You can look it up. Okay. Cultures are unique, you know. Here's one for you. In most hierarchical countries, in especially like in South Korea and also like in Sweden in its way, in countries that have very defined structures, the only way that they learn to trust you if you get bombed out of your gourd with them drinking, all right? Because they figure that once you've had enough to drink, that your cultural barriers are lowered and then they really get to know you, all right? So in the last week, I was teaching the master's students there. They wanted me to go out drinking with them. I can't drink with them. I'm their boss, for the lack of a better word. So they said, well, I went and had a few drinks with them and they got to know me. But that's one of those things that's culturally true. You find in cultures like Sweden and Korea, to act out when you're drunk is socially acceptable. Whereas when you're sober, There needs to be a certain unification in your acting. However, in the United States, it's the exact opposite. You can act out any way you want, but if you get bombed off your gourd, that's not socially acceptable. Cultures are unique. Okay. So the fastest way that we can get into markets is to buy the knowledge to get in. You go in, buy the corporations that have first-hand knowledge, and that's hopefully how you make your success. Remember my discussion, by the way, about Exotica and buying LensCrafter? I actually met one of the major buyers that worked with Exotica at the SMA. Exotica failed miserably, and it had to do with cultural differences between them and LensCrafter and their lack of understanding of how to be able to make things work. And so the fastest way, if you're going to turn to globalization, is to acquire your way in. You bring in local managers with firsthand knowledge. The acquirer takes all the risk. The partner is there to remain engaged. Because the greatest barrier is the local knowledge and execution format. And that is why it's very important to understand culturally the areas in which you would deal with. To link is extremely rude in China. In Texas, that's hook 'em horns. In Italy, that is a rude gesture. That means you're not worth the dirt under my finger, right? It's important if you wish to be able to. One day I'll show you the business card ceremony in Japan. The other alternative is to go with a franchising model. Business format is the same, but they do what's called master franchising. And so our friend who went into Thailand with his pizza place did what was called the master franchising. He went in, created the business format there, retained the local managers, and actually set up franchises for Pizza Hut all across Indonesia. It's called the master franchise model. And he was wildly successful. And so the last that I wish to talk about is e-commerce. And this is, of course, the one, the reason why the preacher danced. So e-commerce is very slowly creeped in. E-commerce has a distinct advantage because, once again, channels is the most expensive and the most difficult to build. E-commerce allows us to get into large markets, gain valuable information about our customer priorities, and do it in a very, very fast way. what are some of the advantages, some of the major advantages of e-commerce? The biggest is it allows the little person to duke it out with the big ones. It allows relatively small suppliers that don't have a channel access to enter the markets. I had one of my students 2 years ago, 2021, who is a pretty big deal, or let's just say he's making his money to go through college on Amazon as an independent dealer selling high performance motor oil online. Yeah. He somehow he got directly to the manufacturers, the ones that sell to the high performance folks, who work at drag strips, and got them to say, let me sell your oils online. And they said, you've got what it takes to come here and talk to me. Why not? Set him up. And he's doing quite well. I asked him if this is what he's going to do. He said, well, this is fun, but you might do something else. I'm like, dude, sell that mob. Don't give it away. It removes the barriers the fastest. There's no startup investments. There's no business model. You can have a nice looking website, promote your business through social media, search engine targeting, traditional means. You can go online relatively quickly. If you're looking for a way in, that's what makes it work. Takes a very small investment. Very little. What's the biggest effort? Time. Okay. So I have a couple of websites I work on with friends of mine. Friday Night Under the Lights. So just to give you an idea. Let's see. So I've been working with some friends on this website now for 20 years. We get about 3,000 customers a week. It's a Friday night radio show. We do live broadcasting online. I have connections through Facebooks, and we do basic stories about football in Mississippi, such as the Battle of the Little Brown Jug, which is actually pretty kind of famous. And we have people like Cricket and other corporations that line up to buy from us. We put up our playoff brackets and we sell. And I can do this online, and it costs my time, which everything costs. But I can also do things online, such as my YouTube channel. Let's see. So this is the Friday night radio show we run every Friday. And so these are the shows that we run once a week on Friday night. And it's been moving slowly, but we're getting up there. And we also broadcast on Facebook as well. So much it cost me to set it up, just the amount of time. And it's worked out pretty well. This is what any of them can do. Revenue on this is when you hit a certain magic number. Okay, I'm not near that number. Okay. The revenue on YouTube, by the way, if you have 1 million subscribers on YouTube, you can make about $65,000 a year, just in terms of the revenue generated from the sales of advertising. So let me show you one of my favorite guys. This is Scotty Kilmer. Scotty Kilmer, this guy. See how many subscribers he has? So Scotty makes about $400,000 a year just on advertising. Okay. This is what's also known as influencer marketing, by the way, just to let you know. Influencer marketing is extremely important. We talked about the franchise model. The franchise model now, in terms of third parties, the influencers are extremely important. So these are the advantages. They are good. What is it about it that is bad? The difficulty with online markets is the conflict with existing channels, or what we call channel pollution. So we had this discussion, I had this discussion with those partners. So to give you an example, I order from Walmart online. I say buy online, pick up in store. Who gets to charge? Does it go to the store or does it go online? The store has to pull those goods and stack them on a shelf somewhere. It costs them 15% of the overall profits for that goods. What do they do? I was talking to a young man who works for Walmart who does this kind of work. And we were talking about the average Walmart stores have anywhere from 500 million to $1 billion in sales. It's crazy if you look at it, okay? But the difficulty, of course, is how do you determine? And this is what conflict with existing channels is. The pie and how you divide up between each channel members becomes less and less. And so how do you know whether or not you're achieving some form of success? And so this is the problem with the new norms of doing business. To respond to online threats, you promote and defend your traditional competitive advantages. You try to enhance the online experience. However, everybody's adding online channels, which they should be. They're moving to a hybrid or a multi-channel model. Downstream retailers are adding their own online capabilities. The secondary product of adding an online channel, by that what I mean is an online retail store, is that channels in the traditional sense must respond. So what that means is, did the mail ever deliver on Sunday? Not till recently, right? Mail never came on Sundays, traditionally. Mail never has, except now. Channels has had to change to be able to go with online problems. A group of 7,200 third-party channel partners with Federal Express is about to walk out on strike with Federal Express because they're saying they've had too much work. This is another example of what's happening. So this is that last thing. So let me add on and talk about what is the multi-channel and what is the omni-channel. The multi-channel is where consumers are given more than one outlet for their purchases from a single company. Multi-channels, when they're considered, multi-channels are what are considered to be siloed. Siloed means that the channels are separate but don't touch each other. Okay. If I order from an online store, I get it from an online store. If I go to a brick and mortar store, I get it from a brick and mortar store. That's what a multi-channel is. You're given more than one outlet for where the consumer purchases the good than from a single channel. And the strategies are, should I add these new channels to the mix? But the mix actually is just one more silo. So, in 2014, Walmart made an amazingly smart choice. Walmart bought Jet.com and made the CEO of Jet.com their chief of operations, or the chief of internet operations. And so the first thing they did was keep Jet.com going up, which has a dynamic search price engine that goes out and looks for the cheapest thing that you wish, and put him in charge of redoing Walmart.com. After that, Walmart went on a buying binge. Walmart bought Voodoo. I don't know if you know these, by the way, but Walmart owns Voodoo. Walmart bought moosejaw.com, outdoor recreation. They bought Flipkart, which is the Indian equivalent of Amazon. They bought shoes.com. It used to be shoebuy.com, but now it's shoe.com. Each one of these, I bet you didn't know, is a Walmart subdivision. They run as separate entities, unique and separate, and they don't touch each other. And that's what a multi-channel is. So, just as I was trying to get into become a professor in 2009, trying to get my specialty in channels, and everybody saying that channels was dead in marketing, a new idea was coming along, and it was all powered by this little thing in our hands. And it was the thing called the Omni-Channel. And this is the ultimate end game for channels in general. Omni-channel retailing. And so in a paper in 2013, this definitive statement was said: in the past, brick and mortar retail stores were unique in allowing customers to touch and feel merchandise and provide instant gratification. Internet retailers tried to woo shoppers with a wide product selection, low prices. As the retailing industry goes to an omni-channel experience, the distinction between the physical and the online will vanish, turning the world into a showroom without walls. The omni-channel is the one ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. To really throw an analogy out there, okay? So, what does it mean? It means I can use my phone to go on to Amazon to research. I can go on the wall. I can go shopping through the different websites, decide that I'm looking at a particular item, like the large TV I wanted to buy, shop among the different retailers who have that particular television, have that good delivered directly to my door by someone who will bring it inside, and all of that done without actually ever going to see it. This is the definition of channel pollution, or channel conflict, if you want to say it. Because who gets credit for the sale? Okay. can you see why it's wonderful and it's daunting at the same time? You really don't know, okay? And that circumstance is certainly atypical. It's not atypical, all right? Everybody does this. The great issue that Best Buy had for years is that consumers were coming in, looking at their equipment, scanning it with their phones, finding the best price online, and actually ordering it before they ever got out. So Best Buy's found a way of blocking that. Or let's just say if it's something like that, they offer that same price before consumers ever get out of the store. But this is one of the great difficulties and the magic of the omni-channel right now. It is fundamentally changing the way we buy. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I've said this before, 2/3 of all electronics are bought online, but over half of those individuals who buy electronics online go into a store to see it first. Because there's something, as I've said before, called the need to touch. We all need to see what we're buying first, especially if what we're buying involves risk, high risk. Interestingly enough, while 2/3 to 3/4 of electronics are bought online, less than 4% of jewelry is bought online. Why? Can anybody tell me? What's that? Yeah. And why? Yes, and she might not like it. Right, yeah, and size is important, yeah. By the way, what are the 4 most important things of diamonds? The 4 Ks? Clarity, you know it, please. Cut, okay, color, and carat. That's right. That's right. Very good. You know that, all right. I had a professor who was a mathematician who put together an algorithm so that when he was trying to buy a diamond for his wife, he plugged in those numbers, and whichever had the highest number, that's the one he bought for my wife, his wife. What a romantic. Anyway, but the other thing is that the more personal an item is, an item that becomes you, it requires the consumer to see, to taste, to touch, to feel. I said one time in a class, how many of you bought your wedding dress online? And someone actually raised their hand and said yes. Okay. My wife bought 4, by the way. I'm not kidding. Okay. So apparently one of the things you do is you buy a wedding dress so you can go jump in a lake with it. Okay. So she bought one, and she didn't spend $5,000 on the dress either. She spent really reasonable amounts on each one, and they look good. But she bought one to take pictures in, one to get married in, one to jump in a lake in, and I don't know what the other ones were. No, they were all completely different. They were all white, but they all had a different style.
You can't try to do a wedding dress.
I don't know. I have no idea. So anyway, oh yeah. Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. Okay. So
My wife made hers.
wow.
And her written up in the local newspaper in Charlotte.
By the way, what are the 4 things that you wear on a wedding day? Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Yeah, there you go. Y'all look good. Okay. Oh yeah. So with this final kind of thing, I want you to get the last lesson about the difference between the multi-channel and the omni-channel. And it's all about focus, okay? What makes the multi-channel different from the omni-channel? And so if you consider the multi-channel, those silos that kind of work together, the omni-channel is much different. And it comes down to this last thing. The multi-channel is customer-centric, but the omni-channel is customer-driven. The consumer started beginning of the omni-channel. We all, our marketers, think we're so smart. But like Jag Chef says, marketing is context driven. And it's the consumers who gave birth to the Omni-Channel, and we're just all trying to catch up. Multi-channel retailing in the traditional sense is now, in essence, the omni-channel retailing. And although we do have multi-channels that still exist, it's the omni-channel that is the winner. All right, I think we've hit the end. And so just remember in this chapter, the three most significant trends, those reasons why I talked about they're happening. Remember what the multi-channel is versus the omni-channel, because you probably have an essay question on that. Okay. Remember franchising, the advantages of franchisor and the franchisee, wholesaling, why retailing tends to be global and wholesaling tends to be local. I will probably have 6 essay questions again that you can choose 4. It'll be in class. I'm sorry, I still have that online thing up. I apologize. I might even do 7 essay questions to give you better chances. We'll see how it goes. But other than that, good luck. I'll see you Thursday. Take care.